Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tori. If you're new here, I am getting a very late start to tonight's video, so I have my lighting all set up and I have two very beautiful things happening next to me. I do have my chickens right here. They don't really like to be alone, so if you're new here, we have baby chicks. This one is Daisy and she is my most vocal, and then this one here is Dixie. So they don't like to really be left alone. So I have them in a basket here next to me. And it is also my awake time for my baby that's due in May. So I have some beautiful kicking happening in my stomach region if you see me wince in this video. And I have some chicks that are just being extra vocal tonight. So I hope that isn't too distracting, but I did want to make a few announcements before we start this video. We are going to be talking about in this video some foods that you can store indefinitely, and it all comes down to environment, circumstance, what the food is, and we're going to get right into that. But I have a few ideas for videos this week, so you might be seeing videos back to back. I have a kind of wonky schedule this week, so we are trying to work with that. If you are new here, hi, hello. My name is Tori. We do prepared life here in Northern Colorado on a budget. Typically, I am this scattered, so welcome to the channel. We would love it if you hit that subscribe button. I promise we're a fun time. We have a beautiful community down in the comments below. If you ever want to chime in and introduce yourself, that would be really awesome. I am a strong believer that everyone has something positive to contribute. So if you have any tips or tricks that you gathered from this video that maybe I have not mentioned, definitely drop those in the comments below. And without further ado, let's get right into this list. Alrighty, number one on the list is going to be honey. Now, honey is rather new to me. I never really enjoyed it as a child. We used to go to the farm stand down the road and get honey sticks. I just was never a fan. I would say I'm still not a fan to eat it just raw and by itself, but I do like to cook with it, and it's very accessible to us out here. I always suggest getting local honey if you are not sourcing it on your own, which most of us are not. That would be a venture a lot of homesteaders are into. I don't think I will ever venture into that. I just think it's such a beautiful art, and I like to observe from a distance. If any of you have bees, if any of you keep bees, please let me know in the comment box below. I'd love to pick your brain about it. I'm definitely interested, but it's not something that I will be going down the road of doing it ourselves. I just always like to hear about people's experiences. Now, honey, we love it for immune support. My kids love it. I try and sneak about a tablespoon of honey into my children's diets about once a day, and I still follow the guideline, wait until your child is a year old. Of course, you need to check with your doctor about that one, but honey you can store in whatever vessel you want, but indefinitely you want to store it in a cool, dark area, and my best tip is to store it in glass. Some of you may have a different idea, but I have heard that storing it in glass is the best way. And we get our honey local here, and they already store it in mason jars for us. I will say, if I'm stocking up on this, I would want a few jars if I'm storing it indefinitely, just because we go through it so frequently. I like to substitute it for sugar in a lot of my recipes, and it really takes a different, unique flavor in my opinion, especially with my baking. I follow the Pennsylvania State Grange and all of their baking guidelines. I'm from Pennsylvania, and then I just go ahead and put all of my elevation data into that because we are living in Colorado and we're at a higher elevation. So honey has never really seemed to make an issue on any of my recipes when it comes to baking, but I will say storage is key in your upstairs pantry too, your everyday pantry. Mine just happens to be upstairs, but this can be stored long term. So as some of you know, I have done my prepper pantry tour. A lot of you have come here from that video. I have my everyday functioning pantry. I have long-term storage, and then I have about a 2-year shelf life storage. I do suggest finding somewhere else outside of your home to store food, and we talk about that in the other video, so I'm not going to go into too much depth here. But 2 of those pantries contain honey, and that's going to be my long-term storage and then my everyday working pantry. I think honey is a great staple to have in any diet, and there's a lot that you can do with it. The next 2 I'm just going to get out of the way. I'm sure you're tired of hearing about it, but white rice is one of them. And I like to store white rice in some mason jars, some larger ones, and I like to vacuum seal them and just keep them in a cool, dark area. We do go through a lot of rice, I will say that, because it's a cheap ingredient and it packs a punch in terms of satiating my family. So it's something that is very filling. It's a great starch to have on hand if you can consume it. And I think everyone should have it in their working pantry, whatever kind of rice that you like. The only ones I would not suggest doing is your forms of brown rice. There's an oil in there and that could go rancid. So that's not going to store indefinitely. That's not going to look good on your shelf in 20 to 25 years. But if you need to store that, that would be more of a 2-year pantry situation. I just wanted to throw that in there in case you were thinking of it. But white rice is really best stored in Mylar bags, and I do both. I do like putting things in mason jars because aesthetically it looks nice to me. And I know that's really not a big deal to some people. And when I say it out loud, it sounds silly, but I like having both. And they are really great to keep in some of the smaller Mylar bags, so you can put in your bug out bag because you can reconstitute it with water and cook with it on a camp stove if ever you need to flee the area that you're living in. So white rice is a great one. And then moving on from that is going to be dried beans. I get my beans locally. I live in a community where there are many beans available to me. Every farmer specializes in a specific type of bean. And my favorite to keep on hand are pinto beans because of the cost. I can get organic pinto beans at a great cost. I think it comes down to about 68 cents a pound for organic dried beans. And I feel like that's a great price. Let me know in the comments down below if you get your local beans at a good price. Of course, you can buy them in bulk from Azure, but if you have something local, that's also a great option. If you don't have any of that and maybe you don't want to order in bulk, Walmart has a great variety at a great price. I think that they are the cheapest in my area. I get comments about Aldi all the time. I don't have an Aldi here, so that's why I don't bring that up. I'm just letting you know what works best in my area. So Walmart is the cheapest in my area unless I'm buying bulk locally. So let's talk beans. I like to store my beans in Mylar bags, and then typically I am using my vacuum sealer now, getting all that extra air out of there, and then I am heat sealing it. And that's the best way for me. Of course, you want to throw your oxygen absorbers in there. Definitely look in my emergency preparedness playlist. I show you all about Mylar bagging and how to do it and how to do it in the right way. So that's definitely something that you could look into. If you're not a fan of Mylar bags, you could do your mason jars. And I love mason jars, don't get me wrong, but you have to think about light when it comes to your mason jars. Even if you have a tinted one, which I wouldn't suggest doing because whatever it's tinted with could leach into your food depending on what jar you've gotten. But I keep mine in a cool, dark area. That does not mean I don't move it from time to time, and it is exposed to light every now and again when I open that door that the long-term storage is in. So you could put like blankets over it, but I really suggest Mylar bags. I think they're a great product to have in your prepper pantry. So that is my suggestion for your dried beans. Some people can't digest beans, and I say this in every prepper video. You need to prep what your family can actually eat, what your family enjoys. So if no one in your family can eat beans, maybe throw that one off the list and do some extra rice or something like that. But I did want to make that disclaimer because I always get that question, what if I can't eat it? Well, This is just my experience. We love beans. I was a plant-based eater for a very long time. I still consider myself a plant-based eater. I just am a little bit more conscious about where my dairy comes from if I do consume it, or where my meat comes from if I do consume that. And right now I'm just consuming wild caught fish and things like that. So that is up to you. I did want to just say that one more time for people that are new here that get confused about what they can store. Store what you want, store what you like. I say it every video. Next one on the list is rather new to me, and that's dehydrated vegetables and or freeze-dried vegetables. I do not have the funds to be buying a freeze dryer, but there are freeze-dried items still out there available to me. So it's not things from my garden, it's things that are already pre-packaged, which, you know, has its positives and negatives. I think it's great that it's accessible for people like me that don't have that freeze dryer, but there are other options. You can dehydrate, and my best tip for dehydrating vegetables in the winter season, which is where we are now, is heading to your local Kroger or discount grocery store. Kroger for me has discounted vegetables. It seems as if every time I talk, that's when the birds are chirping. So I do apologize. I am trying my best not to be too distracted in this video, but Kroger has really great vegetables, and I can find them organically and locally sourced at a really great price. So I just look for the clearance sticker, and then what I like to do is just bring them right home and dehydrate them. And I like to store them in glass jars that I save. So I save pasta jars. I know what brands I like that I can reuse to reseal. And I know that was a mouthful, but I love to can. And there are certain brands that have lids that you can use to can different items. I like to water bath can. It's considered a rebel canning method if you aren't doing high acidic vegetables, and I've talked about that in videos before. There's like a huge debate in the canning community. I'm just not a pressure canner. That's not my thing. So I do like to dehydrate things from time to time, and what I have found is bell peppers and things like that are the best when it comes to dehydrating, because you can use that in a variety of recipes and you can reconstitute it very easily. Okay, I'm just gonna hold them now, but I never was sure about vegetables and how to dehydrate them, if they would reconstitute well, and they really do, like I said, but you know, the flavor is going to be different. And then when you freeze dry and when you are dehydrating, they definitely lose their nutrients. So that is something to think about. If you are buying freeze-dried vegetables, I find that I have to look at the brand, because there can be additives to that, making them preserve longer, which is odd to me, but you really have to look into that, because then it really messes with your shelf life. It could possibly not last for that indefinite mark. And when I am saying indefinite, I should have said this in the beginning, I'm saying like 20-25 years. I'm really not sure if I believe what the FDA is saying. They are saying canned vegetables are good indefinitely, but always use my rule of thumb, just smell it. If it smells rancid, you probably shouldn't eat it when it comes to this list. Canning's a little different, because when they talk about canning, they're speaking mostly of botulism, and that's something not too detectable. You can't smell that. You may be able to visually see some signs of that, but that is also something to keep in mind. So the FDA actually released a list recently about items that could be stored indefinitely. I wanted to do my video based on that, but it's still, you know, a government entity, and it's really tricky to believe those lists, to be honest with you. So that is also something you need to keep in mind. Okay, the next one on the list is going to be molasses, and I have all types of varieties of molasses, and I have that from a few people that have sent me some, so thank you to you. A lot of the Amish stores back east that I have been missing keep molasses, and I am not well versed in what stores the best, because I haven't been doing this storing game for 20 to 25 years, but we have a variety of molasses down there. We have blackstrap, and I mean, that is really great to take daily if you aren't taking it already. I am taking a pause on that in my pregnancy just because it's not something that is tasting the best to me, but I do have quite a bit of it down in my long-term food storage. So molasses can be stored in the vessel that it came in. If you are getting it from bulk stores, which in Colorado we are fortunate enough to have these really cool stores that do zero waste packaging. So you bring in your own vessel and you can fill up your container with whatever you need at a discounted price, and they have great ingredients. I live on the Front Range, so I like to frequent a store in Nederland, which is a town right above Boulder, and it's a co-op. I would suggest looking into that if I were you. It might not be available to you, but that's where I'm getting a lot of my molasses. And I will say we cook with it from time to time, and the blackstrap is something that we just take orally, but there's not too much that we're doing otherwise with molasses. It's typically something that we're baking with. And when it comes to molasses, I will say my Pennsylvania State Grange cookbook calls for a lot of it. We are Pennsylvania Dutch, and I have a few other backgrounds in me as well, but I did want to say that a lot of people don't really know what to do with it. I think it can be a great ingredient for your pantry. You just have to know what to do with it. So I think baking would be the best start for you if you're new to molasses, and then work your way up to the blackstrap. I've realized that I can put it in my coffee and tolerate it. I drink coffee black as is, and I don't really like taking it by the spoonful. I know a lot of people do that. If I am doing that, it's more of a detox drink for me, which sounds strange, but I drink it with lemon water and then a little bit of charcoal powder, and that's not something I'm taking every single day, but that's when I add some molasses to it just to change the flavor and then just to have a nice little tonic for my body. I'm doing that typically after a sickness or if I feel something coming on, but that's just me. I have plenty of videos on tinctures and what I do herbally to make myself and my family feel better in the event of illness. So done with molasses. Next up on this list is going to be sugar. They're just sitting here all nuzzled and it's the sweetest. Sugar. So sugar you can store in a variety of different ways. I would not suggest anything but your typical white sugar. To be honest with you, I don't think coconut sugar would store well, perhaps cane sugar, but I stick with white sugar when I am storing, and I store them in mason jars without an oxygen absorber. And same thing with Mylar, you don't want oxygen absorbers with that, but I did want to mention sugar because it's a great staple to have. You can bake with it, but there's also a lot of other things you can do with sugar. Definitely look into that. I'm not here to tell you how to use your ingredients, but sugar can store indefinitely, and that's something across the board. You will find this on every single list. Again, mason jars are great, but if you can find Mylar bags, that's the best way to store them, in my opinion. So it depends what you're working with. A lot of these things can be stored in under the bed storage. I know a lot of people come on here and say, I don't have the room to store these things. If you're gonna do a long-term food situation in your apartment or small area, I would suggest just a small under the bed storage with this list of things that I'm talking about here. Start with maybe one or two, but really focus on that 2-year pantry, and I think that will work best for you. You definitely can have both. It just depends on how you want to utilize your space. I do have a video on small space organization. I know I keep referencing videos, but I do want to keep this kind of short and sweet. I don't want to just go into detail about how you should store your preps. So definitely look out for that video as well. And then going along with sugar is going to be salt. You can store salt indefinitely. I, again, am unsure what kind of salt, but typically I'm getting Redmond's Real, but I get pink Himalayans. We have switched spots really quick, but what I was saying is salt. You can find it super cheap at Walmart, but I would suggest buying this one in bulk because it's just a quick upfront cost and it is cheaper than a lot of these. And I feel like you could find it in a variety of places. I feel like people are very picky with their salt. I happen to love salt, although not the best for you. I really enjoy it. And I've actually been enjoying some homemade alkaline water, and you'll have to do your research into that, but I think it's super yummy. I started with just some lemon water with a pinch of salt in the mornings, and it's really, I don't know, been helping with my brain fog. I know that sounds silly that you know, salt could, oh my gosh, that salt can do that, but it really can. Alkaline water, though, if you make it homemade, you're using baking soda with. So you'll have to do your research into that, but that's another thing that you could be storing indefinitely. Baking soda has a very long shelf life. I would not say it has that 25-year, and I'm not sure why. I've done some research into it, and I'd say that's maybe a 10 to 15-year, but that's something that you can add to your list, and you can make your own alkaline water. There's definitely a lot of supporting evidence into alkaline water. You just have to look into that. But that is where I was going with the salt before I get a little chicken distracted. So that's something you can keep on hand that's super cheap. And I think that is another thing that we need to think about when we're making this list. What are some items that we can store long term that are also great budget friendly options? And I think this list is really going to give you some options. And then last on the list is going to be dried fruits. This is something I don't store because my family doesn't enjoy it. Nobody in the family enjoys it. I have done collabs with companies that have sent us dried fruit and we will make the most of it, but typically we are gifting it or giving it away. My neighbor happens to love dried mango, so it's helpful for her, but dried fruit is just not something we ever really enjoyed. Fruit leathers would be another option, but that's something that you would have to make on your own, that you don't have too many additives to. Really, it just needs to be that fruit dehydrated and rolled up. And even then, it's not going to be lasting a very long time. When it comes to that fruit and the factors of the elements, you know, that heat and things like that, that is something that you really need to keep in mind. That is something you definitely want in a cool, dark area. I will say, of all places, Dollar Tree has a great selection of dried fruit, but you need to look at each dried fruit bag. Some brands, companies, they come from, you know, different countries, and you don't know what additives they're putting into their dried fruit. It really should just be the fruit, dehydrated fruit or freeze-dried fruit. I, you know, have that available to me if I want it to. Azure has, again, a great selection, but it's not something I'm keeping on hand. It would be a sweet treat, and I suggest you keep it on hand if you want, but that's another one that can be stored in Mylar. And I'm sure you're sick of hearing me say that, but I really do feel it's like the superior way to have long-term food storage. So I think that's the best list that I can give you off of the top of my head. I've done my research on this, and I really wanted to pinpoint items that people can use in different ways. And also I wanted it to be budget friendly because a lot of you can go out and spend $10 a week, but if that is adding up to $40 a month, some of us don't have that extra cash. And I think that's another important item to highlight. So maybe you don't have that $10, maybe try $1 or $2 to bring into your long-term food storage. That shelf life, that's going to be indefinite. So that is something to keep in the back of your mind. This is definitely doable. I would suggest even looking into your local food pantries if you qualify. They also have long-term food storage options for you. I find that a lot of their food is long-term shelf-stable food. So definitely look into those areas. If you have a bent and dent store, that's a great way to look into some of these items. A lot of us are growing some of these veggies and fruits that you can dehydrate, so that's another option. And when I think of long-term food storage, I also am thinking of my seeds, and seeds can also be stored, but not indefinitely, because then that will affect your germination, and you don't want that to happen. So some vegetables, you know, you can grow indefinitely with those seeds, but other vegetables just won't work. I tried onions recently and they didn't germinate. One packet did and one didn't. And that was because they were from a very long time ago. I've just been holding on to them because my neighbor noticed that I was enjoying planting. But yes, that is my list for you. I am sorry about the elements. They're very cute elements, but I have been working very hard to get these videos out to you in a timely way, and I've been trying to keep a house. So if you are enjoying these videos, please make sure you're liking them, dropping an emoji or something showing me that you're enjoying this, and I will continue to make them. But Prepared Life on a Budget is definitely something that I do every single day. It's something that I'm passionate about, so that is why I love sharing it with you. That is going to do it for today's video. I hope you learned a little bit about what foods that you can store for a very long time. All of these foods, of course, are going to be unique to yourself and your family. Please remember to drop any foods that I may have forgotten down in the comment box below, and stay tuned this week. We have some very unique videos coming up. If you are missing my day in the life content, definitely check out my new channel. That's always linked in the description box. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. As always, stay adventurous, stay creative. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, y'all.